You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Wednesday, October 21st, 2015, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Oh my goodness, it's so good to be back in beautiful legal Potland, Oregon. I had to fly the unfriendly skies of United Airlines, where your time is worth $6.30 an hour. You want to read all about that? You can follow my Twitter feed at Radical Russ and scroll backwards, where I got into an all caps screaming match with United Airlines social media people. It was a lot of fun. Don't have enough time to recount the entire story right now, unfortunately, because while I was gone these past couple of days and the weekend before that at the Virginia Normal Conference, there was a landslide of marijuana news to have to cover, and we're going to have to get to all of that today on the Russ Belville Show. Coming up in our Behind the Headlines segment, a very unfortunate segment that we have to give, and that is remembering the legacy of Vincent Lopez, the founder of Patients Alliance for Cannabis Therapeutics in Texas, patient liaison for Texas Normal, who succumbed in his fight with Becker's muscular dystrophy this Monday. I had the honor of meeting him at least 3 different Texas events that I did, and nobody was a stronger advocate for legalization of marijuana than Vincent Lopez. We'll play you some highlights from the 2014 Dallas-Fort Worth Normal Conference, where I had the chance to interview Vincent on a panel. Then we'll follow that up with drug war data mining, where we get some good news for the day, and that is the latest Gallup poll shows 58% support for marijuana legalization in the United States of America. That's the 3rd straight year that we've had majority support for marijuana legalization, according to the Gallup poll. We'll dig deeper into those numbers in our drug war data mining segment. Then coming up at 1:30, we're going to take you back to Richmond, Virginia this last weekend for a Ladies of Legalization segment featuring Lauren Padgett from SSDP talking about women in the legalization movement. And then at the end of the show, following our anti-drug public service announcement of the day, we'll give you more from the Virginia Normal Conference featuring Vivienne Smith from Virginia Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition. You know, I learned a whole lot about Virginia while I was there, including the fact that they have some of the toughest marijuana laws in the country, right up there with Arizona and Florida. So kudos to all of those Virginians who came out for marijuana legalization, and especially for putting their money where their mouth is. If you check out marijuanapolitics.com, under my name, you can find my article about how they raised in just 15 minutes $1,250 to defeat one of the most anti-pot state senators, not only in Virginia, but in the entire United States. Yeah, the guy's name is, what is that guy's name? Bryce something. Bryce, just lost it. Anyway, coming up in the 420 radio news, we've got plenty of headlines, like I said, to have to get to. We've got the Canadian federal election results, the new Gallup poll, a federal judgment that bodes very well for medical marijuana dispensaries, Montel Williams getting involved in Ohio, Republicans in Utah trying to increase medical marijuana access, and once again, a religious user of ganja learns that his get-out-of-jail-free card wasn't worth the $200 he spent for it. All that coming up on the Russ Belville Show on podcast and live, followed in hour 2 with more, including your phone calls. Stick around.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio. Tune in, turn on, get highly educated. Imagine life without taxes. Let New Era Certified Public Accountants, NewEraCPAs.com, handle your Cannabis 280E and tax strategy. Get your business prepared with New Era CPA's Cannabis Finance Bootcamp. NewEraCPAs.com. With years of experience in the industry, we are one of the nation's leading accounting firms for growers, dispensaries, and ancillary companies from Washington to California. NewEraCPAs.com.
Let's talk about the plan to legalize marijuana. The politicians are playing games by calling it a monopoly. They'll do anything to trick voters. It's not a monopoly. It's a plan that initially limits the number of growers for strict regulation before adding more. It provides medical marijuana for those in need. It creates jobs and generates tax revenue. If you think it's time to legalize marijuana, this is our chance. Vote no on 2 and yes on 3.
It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Replays of 420 Radio News are embeddable and shareable from our SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/RadicalRuss. Now, the marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is your 420 Radio News for Wednesday, October 21st, 2015. After nearly a decade in power, Stephen Harper has resigned as leader of the Conservative Party after Canadians voted for change and swept the Liberal Party into power. Exceeding expectations, the Liberal Party secured a clear majority outright without the need to form a coalition government. Liberal Party leader Justin Trudeau has called for implementing legalization quickly, but it will be very interesting exactly how cannabis commerce will be regulated. Trudeau has pledged to move on legalization right away, but noted that it could take a year or two to implement. Trudeau's Director of Communications, Kate Purchase, did state that Colorado was a model that the party was considering. As Canada develops the rules and regulations for cannabis commerce, hopefully the country will move forward with ending criminal penalties for personal possession, cultivation, and sharing of cannabis. A Gallup poll released Wednesday showed 58% of American adults think marijuana should be legal, up from 51% a year ago, with just 40% believing it should remain illegal. And the number of adults who said they've used marijuana sometime in the past year has doubled in the past decade, with 9.5% of adults in 2013 saying they'd used marijuana sometime in the past year, compared to 4.1% in 2001. Notable increases came among women, African Americans, the middle-aged, and those living in the South. Medical marijuana dispensaries scored a major win on Monday when a federal judge ruled that the Department of Justice cannot prosecute legal providers of medical cannabis. In his ruling, Senior District Judge Charles R. Breyer lifted an injunction against a California dispensary, the Marin Alliance for Medical Marijuana, and its founder, Lynette Shaw, ruling that a budget amendment Congress approved last year requires the federal government to respect state marijuana laws. The DOJ is thus precluded from criminally prosecuting organizations like MAM that comply with state regulations. The decision could have wide-ranging implications, as 23 states plus the District of Columbia have legalized pot for medical use. Another 17 states have allowed the use of non-psychoactive cannabis extracts to treat conditions like severe epilepsy in children. An effort to legalize medical and recreational marijuana in Ohio is getting the backing of TV personality Montel Williams. The celebrity, who hosted the Montel Williams Show for a decade, is scheduled to endorse Issue 3 during a Columbus appearance Wednesday. Williams also will announce opposition to Issue 2, a proposed ban on constitutional monopolies that's designed to block the marijuana effort. It marks Williams' first time getting involved in a legalization effort. As one Republican Utah lawmaker continues to push for the state to adopt a medical marijuana program, two of his GOP colleagues on Wednesday detailed a scaled-back alternative to allow a few thousand people to use cannabis extract oil. One proposal from Republican Senator Mark Madsen would allow those with certain chronic or debilitating conditions to consume edible marijuana products such as brownies and candies. It would not allow marijuana to be smoked. A more restrictive alternative from two GOP lawmakers expands a limited program Utah passed in 2014, which allowed those with severe epilepsy to use cannabidiol oil after obtaining it from other states. A new proposal from Representative Brad Daw and Cedar City Republican Senator Evan Vickers would now allow the oil to be made in Utah. Dispensaries would be limited, but the program would allow the oil to be shipped to patients in rural parts of the state. A self-described bona fide medicine man for the Oklavuha Native American Church won't have marijuana in his bag of tricks, at least legally. Brandon James Barnes, a card-carrying member of the Oklavuha Native American Church, or ONAC, which considers cannabis a sacrament and healer, lost his bid to have federal marijuana charges dropped for growing hundreds of plants. Barnes argued that his marijuana production was protected by the First Amendment's right to free exercise of religion and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993. Federal prosecutors disagreed, so did U.S. District Judge Janet Neff. As a result, Barnes of Marshall, Michigan, pleaded guilty Tuesday, October 20th, to manufacture of more than 50 marijuana plants. U.S. Attorney Matthew Borgula said, quote, "To apply for a membership in the ONAC, all that is required is the purchase of a membership card for $200. Once a member of ONAC, the purveyors of ONAC represent that cardholders can legally possess and use controlled substances, including marijuana," end quote. This has been your 420 Radio News for Wednesday, October 21st, 2015. I'm Russ Belville.
Warning. Hits taken on this show are larger than they appear. Do not try this at home. These people are professionals. Or at least they pay me to say that.
I'm sure you've heard about the ballot issue to legalize marijuana. And you're probably wondering, does this plan make sense? How will it make Ohio safer? And what does it mean for me? Go to responsibleohio.com and get the facts.
The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association in the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details. On my flights back from Richmond, Virginia this weekend, I was saddened to learn about the death of Vincent Lopez in Texas. Vincent is one of the bravest people I have ever met in this fight of ours to end cannabis prohibition. I probably met Vincent on my first trip to Texas in 2011, and the last time I saw him was in 2014 at the Texas Regional Normal Conference. Vincent was diagnosed with Becker's muscular dystrophy at age 11. His body weakened, but his spirit grew mightily once he learned of the therapeutic power of cannabis and how it eased his suffering. His 50-pound body housed a metric ton of determination. Vincent became the patient liaison for Texas Normal and founded the Patient Alliance for Cannabis Therapeutics, or PACT. He became known for his rousing speeches at the Texas Global Marijuana March and his organizing of testimony in Austin in support of amending Texas law to help provide for patients like little 9-year-old Alexis Bortel, one of far too many children who've had to emigrate from their home state to Colorado just to receive life-saving cannabidiol treatments for their epilepsy. My few brief meetings with him cannot possibly bless me with the insight to tell you enough of his legacy to do justice. So instead, I present to you his appearance on the 2014 DFW Normal Conference, and I was moderator.
All right, so let me move on to Vincent, because, you know, I get to travel all over the country and see a lot of folks at a lot of chapters, and sometimes doing these events is like family reunion time, because you get to see all the same faces you've seen, known year after year. And I've seen Vincent at the last 2 or 3 times I've been here at Dallas, and I've just always been stunned that he's just so active in this movement and, you know, facing such severe disability. And I ache thinking that cops would put you in a cage, man. That just breaks my heart to think that. What keeps you in Texas? How do you do what you do? And how does medical cannabis help you?
Well, I would say my story starts out in 2008, 2009. And around that time frame, I was pretty much stuck in what we have come to know called as the cannabis closet. And it's a closet of fear, it's a closet of intimidation. And I found myself in that position in 2009. And in pondering about a condition I could no longer do anything about or had no cure for. And it was at that time that I had realized that I had an answer in my hands, an answer that I was living in secret with. And I had realized that the only way to overcome these fears and intimidations was for me to take that first step out of that cannabis closet. And today it made me realize that that is ultimately the first step to empowerment, is by coming out of that cannabis closet and facing those fears and facing that intimidation. And how I do it, I've been often asked that by many people. And all I can say, it's you do what you have to do. It's a matter of acceptance and self-awareness of your condition and where you are in that condition. But when you add the elements of empowerment to that, it makes us, as patients, a very strong force. And bringing the truth to the legislators, as, in my opinion, they asked for it. And if we have to visually show ourselves to show what suffering looks like, I'm more than happy to do it. And during this trial, I have met many patients of all different ages, all different ranges. And I can tell you all right now that nothing breaks my heart more than seeing these little children who are suffering from epilepsy, who are suffering from autism. And it does break my heart, because these children do not have the ability to express themselves to lawmakers like we can. They are unconsciously unaware of what is threatening them, of the condition that is threatening their lives. And because of that, it's very unfortunate that they don't have the voice to express themselves. So therefore, I feel the need for someone to take that stand and be that voice for them. And it comes down to my heart that any child suffering from a cancerous brain tumor like Cash Hyde, a child like Charlotte Figge suffering from epilepsy, is worth my life 10 times over. And I'm glad we'll gladly give it. Yeah.
Medical use of cannabis compared to what doctors may have tried to help you with before?
Well, what I can say to that is that doctors can be wrong. There is such thing. And I tend to believe that people who, we can become slaves to the medical industry by taking their advice over our own. I believe there's no better doctor than ourselves. I believe there's no better moderator of our own bodies than ourselves. And I believe that I have the right to have that choice in how I choose to alleviate my pains. And it's because of that right that I believe cannabis should be free for all. As far as, you know, I'm not strictly to medical or strictly towards rec or strictly towards anything. I'm for it all. But what brings me as an asset to this movement is the visual presence that I bring of disability, that I bring of suffering, because I know it can have a visual impact. And I believe it's very, very necessary.
Thank you.
Well, Lottie frickin' da! Yes, rest in peace, Vincent Lopez, mighty cannabis warrior. Next time any of us are feeling entitled, feeling a little bit bitchy about what's been put in our path as we try to legalize, just think back to little 50-pound Vincent Lopez wheeling through the Texas legislature. It'll change your attitude real quick.
The Russ Belville Show, providing dictionaries to drug czars since 2009.
The Fingerboard extension has fretted instruments to enhance your creativity. It has new and used guitars and banjos from beginning to high class. The Fingerboard extension has National Resophonic, Husson Dalton, Larrabee, Heritage and Recording King guitars, and Mike Ramsey, Wildwood, Gold Tone and Recording King banjos. The Fingerboard extension also has drum stuff, used gear, and parts. Stop by the Fingerboard extension, downtown Corvallis, Oregon at 120 Northwest 2nd, or check out the inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com and reverb.com. Get.Buzz. .Buzz is the internet platform that fuels community interest, excitement, and new experiences. .Buzz is the premier online destination for internet users seeking the latest news on a variety of topics. .Buzz appeals to groups active in blogging, communications, journalism, advertising, and marketing. .Buzz offers registrants a stronger alternative to the shrinking namespace of existing top-level domain names, such as .com, .net, and .org. Get your name now at get.buzz. arguing for the end of adult marijuana prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It is even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more in this edition of Drug War Data Mining. Good day in the drug war data mines today, as the Gallup organization has released what has become almost an annual poll on marijuana legalization. And in devastating news for the opponents of marijuana legalization, the latest poll from Gallup shows a solid majority of Americans nationwide favor the legalization of marijuana for adult personal use, marking the third straight year where there has been solid majority support for marijuana legalization. The Gallup October 2015 poll shows 58% support the legalization of marijuana in the United States. That ties the 58% that they got in the October 2013 Gallup poll, which was taken just 1 year following legalization in Colorado and Washington. The poll in between those, Gallup's October 2014 poll, placed the support at 51%. But as part of a larger trend, 27 national polls have been conducted since Colorado and Washington passed their marijuana legalization laws on November 6th, 2012. 27 polls. Of these polls, conducted by ABC News Washington Post, Angus Reid Global Monitor, Associated Press, Benenson Strategy Group, CBS News, CNN Orc, Fox News, Gallup, General Social Survey, NBC News Wall Street Journal, Pew Center, Public Policy Polling, and Quinnipiac University, out of the 27 national polls since legalization, only 8 failed to show majority support for marijuana legalization. 8 of 27 did not top 50%. So, of course, that means that 19 out of 27 polls since legalization have shown majority support. Now, of those 8 that didn't show majority support, 2 of them showed plurality support. So more people supported than didn't, like a 49 to 48, but not a clear majority. And the other 2 polls were tied. So there were actually only 4 polls out of the last 27 since marijuana legalization began in Colorado and Washington, only 4 out of 27 that showed more people against legalization than for it. Great news for our side. And the last polls that showed majority opposition to marijuana legalization were taken in November and December of 2012. These were 50% opposed, 48% support. So of the 4 where more people were opposed, only 2 of them were majorities. And the average of those 27 polls taken since legalization began in Colorado and Washington, or since it passed in Colorado and Washington, the average of the 27 polls is 51.4%. And of the 7 polls taken since Oregon and Alaska legalized in the last election, 7 polls have been taken. All of them show majority support, and the average among the polls is 54.1%. So this latest poll and the overall trend in polling shows that, contrary to the assertions of prohibitionists like Project Sam's Kevin Sabet, the American people are not feeling a buyer's remorse toward legalization, but rather they're feeling interstate envy for the $200 million in tax revenues and the thousands of new jobs created in Colorado and Washington, and soon Oregon and Alaska. Another damning trend for the prohibitionists is that their senior supporters are dying, and they are not being replaced by junior prohibitionists. For people aged 65 and older, only just over a third support legalization. It's about 36%. But everybody under the age of 65, every demographic under the age of 65 supports legalization. Support for legalization stands at 58% if you're 50 to 64, 64% if you're 35 to 49, and a whopping 71% of adults under age 35 support marijuana legalization nationwide. In less than 2 weeks, Ohioans vote to make it the 5th legal marijuana state in America. To our north, the majority win for Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party bodes well for nationwide legalization in Canada before the end of the year. And with Colorado, Nevada, Arizona, Massachusetts, Maine, and Michigan on deck for legalization in 2016, how much longer can the United States maintain this fiction that marijuana is a dangerous drug with no medicinal value that cannot be used safely by adults? The political graveyard will soon be littered with people like Stephen Harper who say idiotic things about marijuana like this.
Well, you know, as I said before, there's just overwhelming and growing scientific and medical evidence about the bad long-term effects of marijuana. We've spent a couple of generations trying to reduce the usage of tobacco in Canada with a lot of success. Tobacco is a product that does a lot of damage. Marijuana is infinitely worse, and it's something we do not want to encourage.
Good riddance, Stephen Harper. And good news for those of us who support marijuana legalization, as it has risen from 33% support at the beginning of this century to 58% support now. We are winning. Legalization is inevitable. The information for that Gallup poll can be found in my latest article on marijuanapolitics.com. Check out marijuanapolitics.com for my daily article in the featured columnist section. Some handy charts there too of every single legalization poll ever taken since 1969, at least the ones I can find that match the basic question, should marijuana be legal for adults? When we come back, we've got highlights from the Virginia Normal Conference featuring Lauren Padgett from Students for Sensible Drug Policy and Vivian Smith from Virginia Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition. I'm Radical Russ, live from beautiful Potland, Oregon.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. The Russ Belville Show, where the truth about marijuana gets more than a minute to speak.
I remember the day Addison was born. She was just perfect. But then the seizures started, up to 1,000 a day from severe epilepsy. Nothing we tried or the doctors tried worked. So we moved our family from Ohio to Colorado to try medical marijuana. Now Addison only has a few seizures a day, and she's a kid again. We want to move back to Ohio, but we can't because her medicine is illegal there. It's time for marijuana reform.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show and 420 Radio. In 1929, Pauline Sabin began the women's movement to end alcohol prohibition. 4 years later, the 21st Amendment was passed. Women are crucial to ending adult marijuana prohibition, and we celebrate women's marijuana activism in a segment we call Ladies of Legalization. And now Lauren Padgett from SSDP.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for having me. Who's feeling awake? I'm feeling awake. That's so great. All right, so as we're coming together to talk about women in cannabis, I really want to talk about how women engage with the cannabis movement, how we can better engage women as allies, and hopefully give you some information that you can take home with you to use in your organizing efforts. So, let's see, there's the next slide. So my name is Lauren Padgett. I work with Students for Sensible Drug Policy. If you're not already familiar with us, we're allies of NORML. And what we do is we train student activists to become community organizers and advocates with the specific goal of ending the war on drugs. SSDP, we're really proud to have our top 4 leadership positions all occupied by women. Our executive director, deputy director, chair of the board, and vice chair are all women, and it's awesome. So since we are always engaging with students, and our rule is that any student anywhere can start a chapter, inclusivity is one of our most important core values at SSDP. So that's what I'll be talking to you about today. So why is it important that we talk about this? You know, you might have heard that men and women are socialized a little bit differently. It starts in early education. You know, educational researchers have found that when, you know, boys call out in class in the classroom, teachers are likelier to humor them and listen to what they have to say. But if it's a girl who does the same thing, it's put your hand down, let's wait for your turn to talk. And it, you know, it continues into the workplace, into adult life, and really the experience of being in the cannabis movement as a woman isn't too different from an experience, you know, being a woman anywhere. So specifically in the movement, how is our experience of cannabis a little bit different than the guys? We don't see female cannabis users represented in media as often. We're more likely to feel apprehensive about being honest about our cannabis use because it is breaking the law, and it's especially stigmatizing if you have a high-powered job, if you're a mother in particular. And in the newly legal cannabis industry, sexualized marketing, booth babes, things like that, it really doesn't help because it sends the message that, you know, we're objects to be viewed, possessed, commodified. It's really not all right. So, however, women really are influencing the newly legal cannabis market, which you're going to hear plenty about from the rest of the panel. And we've been decision makers in the drug policy reform movement all along. And the reason why it's just so important that we embrace inclusivity when we are reforming drug laws is that by ending the war on drugs, we're rejecting a pillar of institutionalized racism and oppression. And if we're rejecting that, we've got to be consistent with our values and really make an effort to include everyone, and that includes women. So, what are the specific things that people experience when they're feeling like they're not being engaged in our movement? Research shows that it's very common for men to interrupt women in conversation. However, it's equally common for women to interrupt other women just as often. Ignoring women when they speak is also common. There have been times when I've been passed over for a handshake for the person to go shake a man's hand, which is baffling. Like, my hands are good. You know, sometimes, you know, over-explaining really simple concepts. I've been in the movement for a couple of years now. I've been a medical patient for about 5 years, and I still have people explain the difference between sativa and indica to me sometimes. Got that covered. So, you know, it's the sort of thing that once you see it, you can't unsee it. So begin listening in your conversations and look and catch yourself if you interrupt somebody, men and women. Just, you know, think about the way you're speaking because it's really important that everybody gets a voice when we're doing this work. Who's a fan of The Onion? Everybody? Great. So The Onion is America's finest satirical news source. But, you know, a role of comedy in society is to point out the things that are ridiculous about the world by making fun of them. So this headline here, girl finally speaking up enough for people to criticize her speaking voice. The gist of this article is about a young student who finally starts speaking up in class only for her classmates and her teachers to make fun of her nasally sounding speaking voice. And this comedy piece ends with, when reached for comment, Kushnick told reporters that she was considering going back to her old habit of stoically saying nothing throughout the school day when she was simply judged by others to be a stuck-up bitch. So it's almost like there's no happy medium. If you speak up too much, you're aggressive, you're a bitch, you're a problem. If you don't say anything, you're meek, you're weak, you're not a decision maker or a leader. So it's almost like there's no way to win. So even like if we can just point that out, that's good. That's progress. All right, so what are some things that you can actually do in your chapters and in your organizing to better include everybody? Making sure everyone has a voice in chapter meetings. You can appoint women to leadership positions in your chapter. Take special care to mentor someone who's new to the chapter, especially women or people of color. You know, if they don't feel like they're part of the group, they're going to leave and they're not going to lend their talents to the movement. And if it seems like, maybe in conversations, if the same few chapter members are always dominating conversations, always making the decisions, facilitate actively. Ask someone quiet what they think. Maybe even start your meetings with, I'd like to hear ideas from the newest people from the chapter before we jump into like the meat of what we're gonna do at this meeting. There are ways that you can invite disagreement with ideas diplomatically. For example, if you pitch an idea and then say, does anyone disagree? The person who might disagree a little bit is feeling like they can't say something because they'll be the only one in the room who doesn't think it's a good idea. Instead of saying that, you can try to relate to what someone who doesn't agree with you might be thinking. Maybe play devil's advocate a little bit. Does anyone feel that maybe this is the wrong idea entirely and we need to rethink this? It opens conversation a lot better. And if you're worried that that approach might make meetings take a little longer, be a little less productive, yeah, there'll be more discussion, but it'll be better quality. And if your chapter members have a legitimate gripe with something that you're doing, then maybe it's not something to be doing at all. So men, I ask you to be vigilant about, the way that you're speaking and to look out for women and be allies. If you see someone who's, just talking over a woman a lot, like, hey, let her talk. Or, say you're at a conference, you see sexual harassment happen, like, hey, cut that out, or say to her, like, you okay with this? Very often I've, been at conferences and wanted to confront someone, who was showing inappropriate behavior, or I was speaking to a company that had this Barbie doll shaped mannequin with like her shirt pulled all the way down, and I really was not heard until I had a male friend next to me who was saying the same thing. So we're not totally there yet, but if we can work on this together, it will get a lot better. And what I ask out of women is that you raise each other up, support each other. We're socialized to compete with other women because we're told that only one of us gets to be prom queen. And it's really important that we just validate each other and congratulate other women on our accomplishments. I went to a Women Grow Leadership Summit last summer, and our icebreaker was something I had never done before. We had to go around our tables. Every woman named an accomplishment that she had done that year, and then everyone at the table had to congratulate her. I'd never been asked to congratulate a woman in my entire life, and I didn't even know that until last year. So what I'm basically asking of you is that you make inclusion as much a part of your cannabis etiquette as passing to the left. So if you don't believe me that confronting sexism, harassment, and oppression is something that you should be doing and something that actually works, I'm going to tell you a story. So when you go to the top cannabis industry conferences now, National Cannabis Industry Association, Marijuana Business Daily, you will not see booth babes or sexualized marketing anymore. And that really used to be the norm. How did this get changed? 1 year ago at Marijuana Business Daily, my boss, Betty Aldworth, attended. She was one of the spokespeople for Colorado's Amendment 64 campaign, very close with a lot of women in the industry out there. And as they gathered for the conference, they started to compare notes on things that men had said to them and marketing that they had seen. And it was getting so ridiculous that it was almost a competition for who had heard the worst thing. So Betty observed that correcting behavior among individuals wasn't changing things quickly enough, and staying silent wasn't empowering anybody. So they decided to take it to Twitter, and they started tweeting things that people should have been embarrassed to say. They used the hashtag for the conference, they used the hashtag #CannaBias, and the conference organizers reached out to Betty and said, like, if you see this happening, we have security to deal with it. If you're harassed, report it. And now moving forward at these industry conferences, sorry, excuse me, need a little water. Great. SSDP is going to be exhibiting at this year's Marijuana Business Daily Conference, and I received the following in an exhibitor planning email. Where is it? Be professional. The days of booth babes ended in the 80s and is highly offensive to most business professionals. The objectification of women and men is not the message our industry wants to convey. Make sure all staff representing your brand realizes they're representing our industry. Furthermore, Troy Dayton, CEO of the ArcView Group, was just quoted as saying that it has become very unfashionable very quickly to have scantily clad booth babes repping products at trade shows. Now, how did this happen? The women who felt like they were not being included in the industry that they had helped to build, reached out to conference organizers who are really invested in the attendee experience of people who are at Marijuana Business Conference, and they responded. They said, we have resources for you. We will deal with this. We're your allies in this. So communicate with someone who's likely to be your ally on this issue and hear you out, and speak to them directly. A Facebook flame war is not the way to do it. And then have a concrete, tangible suggestion of what can be done to make things better. Here, the ask was, let's not have booth babes anymore. Simple enough. And also, you should applaud and recognize companies, allies, advocates, anyone who does promote inclusivity, because, if something good happens and no one hears about it, then no one gets to see that should be the standard. So yeah, just the takeaway is that it's really important that everybody gets to have a voice in this movement and do all that you can to help promote that. Thanks so much.
Lauren Padgett from Students for Sensible Drug Policy speaking at the 2015 Virginia Normal Conference this previous Saturday. Got another speech from the conference coming up for you from another strong female leader, Vivian Smith from Virginia Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition, aka RAMP. Listening to the Russ Belville Show. Happy Back to the Future 2 Day for everyone. October 21st, 2015.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Get the latest updates on the Russ Belville Show by following Radical Russ on Twitter and liking the Russ Belville Show on Facebook.
This is Radical Russ encouraging you to take a look at the Weed Blog every day. Johnny Green and the staff at the Weed Blog are on top of all the latest developments in the fight to end marijuana prohibition nationwide. You can even get the Weed Blog on your smartphone by installing the Weed Blog app for iPhone and Android. If it's about weed, it's on the Weed Blog, including my original writing. So don't delay. Read the Weed Blog today. In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
I used to do drugs. And one morning I woke up, I looked in the mirror and I said, "You look frightening." Nobody said quit. And nobody said stop or else. I got sick of it, so I quit. And now, life's the beach.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make them.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it, and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant. For the Radical Rant today, we turn the reins over to Vivian Smith from Virginia Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition.
So for our next presenter on this panel, I think we got Vivian Smith with Virginia Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition. She's been a professional office manager and is the CEO, executive assistant to a CEO at this clinical stage biotech company that is developing treatments for cancer and other life-threatening conditions. She's a lifelong political activist and heavily involved in the Republican Party of Virginia, an active member of Virginia Normal in the Jefferson-Charlottesville area, and the founder of Virginia Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition, a group started by Ann Lee, the 84-year-old mother of Richard Lee, the man who put together the Prop 19 campaign in 2010 to legalize marijuana, that really got this conversation started. I think RAMP is one of the most important groups we have out there for our fight. Please welcome Vivian.
Thank you very much, Russ. And you took a little bit of the information. Can we put light on so I can see a little bit better here? Because I did not make a slide presentation. It didn't dawn on me. So I've brought my notes with me. And what I would like to do is start off by telling you a little bit about myself. And for those of you that have heard this over and over and over again, I apologize. But for those that don't know who I am a wife and a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. So I'm not your typical activist for marijuana, and certainly not for Republican Party. I got involved with NORML through Jefferson area NORML, Brian and Tammy Mundy, and in Charlottesville, and my husband as well. And we were really excited. I mean, really excited to be involved in something like this. Didn't know how people would perceive us or receive us or whatever, but we were very well welcomed, and we felt really good about that. But the reason we got into it, I guess, my husband is very much of a quiet person, and I'm the personality that gets out there and does all these different things. But I had been involved with the Republican Party of Virginia for quite a number of years. I was a chairman in Fluvanna County for a number of years. Then when we moved to Buckingham County, I became the vice chair there. And also in 2009, I was asked or chosen one out of 25 that they ask in the state of Virginia by the Republican Party of Virginia to actually be part of an organization that is called the Jennifer Byler Institute, where they train and they teach you to go out and advocate, to network with people in the Republican Party of Virginia, with legislators, teach you how to do all sorts of things. Raise money, whatever. And if you want to run for public office, they encourage you to do that as well. So what they did is they kind of trained us to be leaders and said, go out and lead and make us proud. And I don't think that all of my sisters, my alumni sisters in Jennifer Byler Institute, are as proud of what I am doing here today as I am. But I stepped out of my comfort zone. I stepped out and I said, I feel like the Republicans need to have a voice. And someone at one of the NORML meetings mentioned RAMP. I had never heard of them. So I immediately went online and I found out who they were, and there was a little block that says, if you want to start a chapter. And I said, oh man, that's for me. And so I clicked on that, and shortly thereafter, they said, well, you know, are you qualified to do this? And so I sent them my qualifications, and they said, wow. And so I felt really good, and we were off and running. Well, I think it was July 1st, NORML and me, I was part of NORML at the time, we're getting ready for a big parade in Scottsville, which is close to where I live, and it's a huge parade, 4th of July parade, that's attended by thousands of people. So I thought, wow, that's a great opportunity for us to get afloat. And so I said, I used my Republican connections there, and I said, well, let's see if they'll bite, if they'll let us do it, or else they'll throw us out and say there's no way we're going to do this. Well, they did. They said, yes, you could do this, and you could be in here. So we got all the plans all ready for having our float, and we thought this is going to be so wonderful. We were just so excited. And then a few days, literally a few days before that 4th of July parade, I got notified that, somebody made a decision without talking to the entire little commission there. And so we decided that in the end, it's not because of what you do or what you stand for, it's about the entire 4th of July parade and what it stands for. And we feel like, you know, all other kinds of people will come in and want to do that. So they compromised and they gave us front row places where we could have tabling events under our thing. And we had a ton of people coming by. It was wonderful. But right before this event, I got notified from RAMP that we were the newest chapter of National RAMP. And we were going to be known as VA RAMP or Virginia RAMP. And I was just through the roof. And I just said, this was so cool. So there we are, standing under our little tent with, in the back of us, with this thing that says Virginia RAMP and Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition. And people were walking by and saying, what? You know, Republicans? It was just like such an anomaly. And I realized at that point, wow, we can't, as constituents, as citizens of Virginia, get this done without Republicans. Republicans own the House and the Senate right now. And unless we get them involved, and we get the constituents, and the constituents are what get me, because they're the ones that are like over 50%, 60% that want it. And so we need to have a voice. So what Pam and I have done, and Nikki and I have done, Lennis and I have done, is with my connections with the Republican Party, is we contacted and reached out to some of these legislators. And some of them, actually all of them, have just said from the beginning, no, this isn't something that we're interested in. Well, talk to us. Let us give you the information that we have. Let you know what we know, because what you're getting is canned from who knows what, the DEA or whoever, and it's not information that is current. It's not information that gives you all the facts. And when I was listening to Mary Lynn, I said, oh my God, you know, if she were to be on one of those visits with these legislators, I think they would be amazed. And they don't have that kind of information. And I think the fact that what Pam was saying, when we go as women, as grandmothers, you know, you're talking to them as a different constituent. You're coming to them at kind of like a gentler side, you know, because we come in and we're just dressed the way we're dressed or whatever. We don't come in you know, funky t-shirts and flip-flops or whatever. We dress for the occasion. We speak to them respectfully, even if we don't agree. And my message is that I know with Senator Eben and Mark Levine, I think that it's wonderful to have that conversation, to have the opportunity to cross the line, to go across the aisle and shake hands and say, you know what, we may not agree on a lot of things, but we agree on this. And that's an important conversation to have. And so in saying that, by the same token, there's so many people that I talk to that say, how can you do this? That is a Democrat issue. That's a liberal issue. And I said, no, it's a civil liberties issue. It's an issue that should be important to every person that lives in the United States, that lives in the state of Virginia, that we are important, not just as your constituents to get you elected. We want you to hear us. This is important to us. This means something to us. And you have to listen to us. You can't throw us away. You can't turn your back like somebody that recently had that happen to them. It's disrespectful, it's rude, and by God, you work for us, you know? I'm sorry, but that's the way it should be. And so I think having said all of that, the other thing that I want to say is we're not going to agree on everything, because I'm not the kind of person that says throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are so many of these Republican legislators that I personally love, not just in the city, in the state of Virginia, but also Congressman Hurt. I'm very close to Congressman Hurt. And I look at the whole package of what it is that they do. And for what I want them to do with reform in marijuana is to change their minds. I want to change their minds. I want to change their hearts. And I can't do this alone. I need the support of all the people in here. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or you're Democrat, Green Party, Libertarian, whatever. You're a human being, you're a citizen that lives in the state of Virginia, and this impacts you, or a family member, or a cousin, or a veteran that you know, or somebody, or a child that's hurting. My feeling is, I know everybody talks about medical and decrim. Mine, I want to go right to the end point. I want legalization. That's what my core is. Because I think if you have that, then everything else will just fall into place. Those other things will happen. But I want to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I cannot believe the people that came before me, and here I am. But I did want to say that as a representative of RAMP, of National RAMP, they started a promotion, if you want to call it that, about a month ago, to have people take pictures with an I Am RAMP sign, because we are all RAMP. We don't have to be a representative or a Republican. We are all against marijuana prohibition. Forget the R, forget the L, forget the D. It is against marijuana prohibition. So I thank all of you, and I love all of you. Thank you so much.
What an important voice for marijuana legalization in a deeply conservative state. There's Northern Virginia and there's the rest of Virginia, and Vivian Smith's message will resonate very well with the rest of Virginia. I encourage all listeners out there on the conservative side of this issue to check out Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition, rampgop.org online. It's surprising that you even have to form a specific Republican group for marijuana legalization, given that marijuana legalization fits all their alleged principles almost to the letter. But then again, consistency and politics don't necessarily mix. That's all the time we got for our podcast hour, but those of you listening live or on demand on 420radio.org through your VIP accounts, stay tuned. We got more highlights from the Virginia Normal Conference. I'm Radical Russ from beautiful legal Potland. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.
I'm Corey Menken with the ASPCA, asking you to join our No Pet Store Puppies